Alright, in order to start embroidery, first we need to have our piece of muslin painted and in the embroidery hoop. Right, I'm going to lightly just draw 3 different types of leaves on my hoop, and this is where I'm going to be doing the embroidery work. Alright, once you have the leaves drawn onto your piece of fabric, you need to choose a color of embroidery floss. Pick a color that contrasts with whatever color you painted so you can easily see what you're stitching. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead with this light green color. You can pick whatever color you would like. Right? Once you've picked the color that you want, you're going to notice that the embroidery floss is actually 6 little strings wrapped together. You're going to use all 6 strings for this activity, but know that if you wanted to have a thinner string, you could simply take and pull, and the strings will come apart, and you could sew with less amount of string. But because we're filling a big space, we're going to use all 6 strings here. Okay? With that said, sometimes it becomes difficult to thread the needle. You're going to want to find this magnetic needle holder and grab a needle off of that. Okay, try to find one with a fairly big eye. Okay? The eye is the area where you thread the needle. Right? Once you've done that, sometimes you'll have to cut the end or simply lick your fingers and make that piece of thread easier to go ahead and feed through the eye. Okay? Once you get the needle through the eye, go ahead and just pull a little so you have some slack off the end. Do not tie a knot right here or you'll never get it through your embroidery hoop. Okay, but what you do want to do is find the end of your string and don't make it super long. Okay, this might actually be a little bit even too long. I'm going to cut it a little bit. Okay. The longer your string is, the better chance of getting it tangled in the back and things becoming very frustrating for you. Okay, so go ahead and tie a knot in the bottom. And that really should be enough to keep it in your embroidery hoop.
All right, once your needle is threaded, you have the leaves drawn on, you're going to start underneath your embroidery hoop. We are going to start with something called the satin stitch. Right, and you want to do the leaf that looks kind of like pieces of grass. You're going to go up through the center to start your stitch. Make sure you're pulling all the way, not to get knots. If you find your string is too long, this is going to be an issue, and you're going to want to cut it shorter. Okay. Once you have one stitch up, you're going to go ahead and stitch through So basically the stitch pattern is come up through one side, stitch over, come up again through the same side, stitch over. It's just creating a series of horizontal stitching. Just use your lines that you created and you drew to follow the pattern of the shape of the grass. All right, to end it, once you have everything finished, and I know this example doesn't show a finished product yet, but when you get all the stitching done, you're gonna need to end your thread in a knot. You're going to do this in the back. You're going to take and loop your needle through an already made stitch, pull. You're going to create a loop, and then you're going to go ahead and take your needle back through that loop that you created, and that's going to create a nice simple knot. You're going to want to go ahead and do that process twice to create a double knot right there, and that's going to make sure your stitching stays in nice and tight, and you can cut off any areas or any tails that are hanging or any loose threads.
Alright, once you finish the satin stitch, which is this one here, that's your basic, most easy stitch, we're going to move on to this leaf, and we're going to do something called the fly stitch. Right? So you got to decide, are you going to use the same color thread and the same color embroidery floss, or are you going to choose a different color? It's totally up to you. Right? So you're going to go ahead, thread the needle again, get the embroidery floss through the eye of the needle, put a knot at the end of your embroidery floss. Alright, so for the fly stitch, first thing you're going to do is you're going to bring your needle up through the very point of your leaf. All the way through, and you're going to create a little stitch down the center vein of your leaf. and then pull through again. Okay, that's step number 1. Step 2 is you're going to come up right around here, right next to the stitch you already made. Okay. Again, pull all the way through. Right, this is where things get a little bit more complicated and complex. Watch what I do. Once you get the hang of it, it'll be real easy. Okay. After each stitch I make, I have to go back down through the center, just a little tiny stitch. And then I'm going to come back up again through the side and repeat that same step I just did over and over again until the leaf is full. Come back up, pull. Okay, this is always the tricky part. Okay, I'm going to have to hold this down with my thumb. I'm going to come in and out right here next to the one I already did. Try not to poke your finger with your needle. I'm going to go in and I'm going to come back out right here. Almost. Okay, good. So over top of the thread I'm holding down with my thumb, pull my needle, and I'm going to create that loop again. Keep pulling, making sure you don't get a knot, and you can see how that's going to fill this entire leaf. Okay, again, before I move on to my next stitch, I have to go down through the center. Let's watch it again. This one's tricky. I'm going to come up again right here. There. Pull. Okay. Hold down with my thumb. I like to do this with my right hand. Come in with my left hand. Up. And then pull. Alright, to do the blanket stitch, you're going to come up through the center here. Try to find, nope, close, right about there, right in the middle where the leaves coming together, and you're going to go ahead and pull up. Alright, this stitch is very similar to the fly stitch, called the blanket stitch. You're going to go ahead and hold that string down. You're going to take your needle, and you're going to put it there, right on the edge, and you're going to poke it up through right here where you first stitched, making sure that the thread is underneath, and you're going to go ahead and pull. Pull gently so you don't create any knots. Right. And you're going to continue this as you go. Hold down with your thumb, put the needle in right next to where you went, and you're going to come out here on the area where you stitched. Again, making sure the needle's on top of that thread so you can get a loop, push through, and pull. Again, you're going to start over here, hold this down with your thumb, go in, come down, push out right here. So, again, needles on top of the thread, pull, and you're going to continue doing that all the way down. And then you're going to switch and go all the way up or down the other side as well. Alright, last but not least, once you have all 3 of your leaves kind of filled in, I'm going to show you how to do something called a French knot. French knot is great for making little small dots of flowers. It's very simple. You're going to go ahead in from the bottom, pull up. Now you're going to take your needle with your thread, and you're going to go ahead and wrap around your needle several times. So wrap 1, wrap 2, wrap 3. You can wrap more times depending on how big you want the knot to be. And then you're going to take your needle you're going to go right into an area right next to where you came up. Go through that hole. Very gently pull, making sure you don't create any knots in your embroidery floss. You've created a perfect little knot that could act as a flower. And go ahead and try this several more times on your embroidery. Pull up. You're going to wrap 1, 2, 3 times. Go back into close to the hole that you came in through. Let your needle go through that hole. Pull. And again, you have this perfect little knot.